Dear Captain, sometimes I wonder if there's more to life than just 16 steps. It does get awfully repetitive sometimes. What can I do?
Well, you're in luck. Hello everyone, this is... Welcome back to Drum Machine 101. This is episode 3, in which we will take a look at how to change the length of a pattern. This allows us to add variation, which makes it less repetitive, and hopefully also a little more interesting. Modern sequencers allow us to have more than 16 steps, often up to 64 steps per pattern. So instead of one bar with 16 steps, we could have 2, 3 or 4 bars in a single pattern. Let's listen to this 16-step pattern. Now we'll double the length of the pattern to 32 steps. This gives us a new blank page we can program. Although, often 2 bars of a pattern are very similar to another with only small variations. So, wouldn't it be awesome if you didn't have to rebuild the pattern for each new page? If your drum machine has a pattern unroll, extend or page copy feature, it will do just that for you. When extending or unrolling a pattern, its existing content is cloned into the newly added steps. That's especially useful when playing live. No annoying silences and a perfect starting point to add some variation. Let's take a look at how all of this is done on some common types of drum machines. Since most sequencers only have 16 physical steps, that's as many as they can display at any given time. To get around that limitation, a sequencer can use pages. The Arturia DrumBrute Impact has 4 pages, for example. We can find the first 16 steps on page 1, the next 16 steps on page 2, and so on. In this case, up to 64 steps in total. So, how can we tell the drum machine to use these extra steps then? Usually, there are 2 different ways to go about this. The first one is called last step. We tell the sequencer that we want to change the length of the pattern, and then we get to decide which of these steps should be the last step of the pattern. So, selecting step 8 would shorten the pattern to just 8 steps. But we can also jump to a different page, a later part of the pattern, and select the last step there, making the pattern longer. If we jump to page 2, for example, this is actually step 32 of the pattern. If we select it, it becomes the last step of the pattern, which now has a total length of 32 steps. So, 2 bars of music, of which the second one is still empty at the moment. When playing live, having whole bars of silence inserted at the end of your pattern isn't always the best idea. So, let's shorten the pattern back to 16 steps, and this time, instead of changing the pattern length, we will unroll or extend the pattern. This also makes the pattern longer, but it will take what was already there and clone it into the newly added steps. Anyone listening to this wouldn't know the difference, because the 2 pages are still the same, but now we can add some variation. The other common way of changing the pattern length is by simply decreasing or increasing the number of steps and pages, like on the Elektron Digitakt in the scale menu. If you press the page button, this changes the pattern length to multiples of 16 and unrolls the pattern at the same time. On the Synthstrom Audible Deluge, changing a pattern's length is very neatly visualized. It doesn't have a limit on pattern length, so we could make it 1,000 steps long if we wanted. Another great feature of the Deluge is cross-screen editing. If we activate this, any change we make to the current page is also made on every other page of the pattern. But what if a drum machine doesn't allow you to make the patterns longer than 16 steps? On the Behringer RD-6 we can make patterns shorter, but the maximum pattern length is 16 steps. In this case, pattern chaining is our only option. Usually, this is done wherever patterns are selected, by pressing multiple patterns at the same time. This allows us to connect them together. They're played one after another, over and over in a constant loop. A pattern chain is only temporary and disappears as soon as we select another pattern or create another chain. Although the newest Roland drum machines like the TR-8S and the TR-6S have very modern sequencers, the pattern length is still limited to a maximum of 16 steps. To make up for that, each pattern has 8 variations, which are basically 8 sub-patterns you can chain together, for a maximum of 128 steps. That's it for this episode. We decided to keep the channel ad-free, so if you like what we do, please support us on Patreon. So, let's give this chaining thing a try. This video is almost over, and YouTube doesn't support more than 16 steps, so click here to chain the next video.
I don't think they're going to make it. Quick, do the thing.
Oh right, don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the bell.